Welcome in to Words with Wallace. I'm your host, Nick Wallace, coming at you Wednesday, May 7th. No surprise, you guys can read the title of the episode. We're going to be talking about the Celtics again, back to back podcasts. Not the circumstance I was expecting, but the Celtics find themselves down 2-0 to the New York Knicks after losing consecutive games in Boston, blowing a 20-point lead in back to back games. Eerily similar situations in both games. Like many of you listening, really all of you listening, right? Most of you guys are probably Celtics fans if you're listening to this podcast. And even if you're not, you're wondering how the hell the Celtics can possibly find themselves in this situation. I'm trying to sort it out in real time. I can't lie. The game wrapped up about 90 minutes ago. Shout out to Denver for not showing up tonight, getting the breaks beaten off them by the Oklahoma City Thunder. That way I don't have any excuse to watch that game. It's been like a 40-point game throughout. So now I've just been forced to rewatch what just took place about 90 minutes ago. I rewatched the end of the third quarter leading into the fourth quarter, trying to figure out how we blew this lead yet again. And so it's all pretty fresh in my mind, but yet I don't have many notes to run through with you guys. I'm just trying to reconcile how this happened. What are the Celtics' chances of actually digging themselves out of the hole? Because it's certainly not over, and we're going to talk more about that. But it's not going to be easy, and it's not a situation that the Celtics have found themselves in since they were down 2-0 in Miami. If you guys remember correctly, they ended up losing game 3 just to storm all the way back in game 7 and come up short. So if there's anything to give you guys comfort as Celtics fans listening to this, it's just that, hey, this team has been punched in the mouth a lot. But I think the main headline is that every single fear that folks who watch the Celtics closely over the past couple of years, all those fears have been put on full display. There weren't many fears around this team this year. I'm not going to lie. There weren't a lot of Celtics haters. I certainly didn't see many people taking the Knicks before this series, but all of the narrative surrounding the Celtics, hey, what happens when they're in a close game and the three-point shot isn't falling, right? What happens if the Celtics are in a close game? Who's going to be the person that's comfortable taking and making close shots with the game on the line, right? There was a lot of dialogue about the Celtics needing to get an alpha in the building. Maybe they trade Jaylen Brown. Maybe they go in on a guy like Damian Lillard. I mean, it sounds crazy saying this out loud. I was never one of those people that believed in that, but that was real trade conversation after the Celtics had an embarrassing loss to Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago. Are they ever going to get over the hump? And I felt like we answered the bell to a lot of those concerns last year on the way to a dominant regular season and a dominant NBA Finals run. But the reality is the Celtics team that we've seen the past 2 nights looks a lot more similar to the previous years where we were always in the mix and always coming up short. And it's really rough because if there was any team that I was extremely comfortable with the matchup, it was the New York Knicks. I got to give them a ton of credit. Mikal Bridges was certainly the story of the game. He came alive. How many points did he finish with? Looking here in real time, 14 points. All of those coming in the fourth quarter, especially at the start of the quarter when they really needed his buckets the most. He was incredible. Brunson had an extremely loud, 17 points tonight. You would think it was a lot more just because of a couple of the shots that he hit down the stretch. But the reality is that New York seems to be oddly comfortable in these situations, right? They have a guy that they know is a closer in Jalen Brunson. They have a guy that can get to his spots, that can get to the free throw line at will. And evidently the Celtics did not have that going down the stretch tonight. So let's talk about it. I think it's worth just having a little bit of context going back to game 1. We don't have to rehash 2 traumatic losses. I think what we saw tonight was more than enough, but all the narrative coming off the heels of the Celtics 20-point loss on Monday was like, wow, they shot 63 pointers. They felt way too complacent. Tatum was repeatedly getting the switch that he wanted, whether it be Jalen Brunson or Mitchell Robinson down the stretch of the last game, and repeatedly settled for step back threes when he clearly had a lane to the basket or maybe would have been better off getting to the mid-range. And a lot of people were just blown away by that 60 three-point attempts number, right? That is a appalling number if you're only going to knock down 15 of those. Celtics have done it many times in the regular season, but making 15 has to be a low for that mark. And I was of the camp that I was not rattled by the game 1 loss. I certainly wasn't happy with how we closed that game. I think the worst part about the game 1 loss is it was like a sandwich of a blown lead and then also just really bad late game execution. So it was like a 2-for-1 punch to the nuts watching back that game on Monday. But I certainly felt like, hey, the 3-point shots that we took, if you actually went back, and I've heard other people kind of go back, and really anybody that actually took the time to comb through the specific attempts that the Celtics took in game 1 from beyond the arc, those shots were wide open most of the time. Those shots were great shots most of the time. We're talking 40% 3-point shooters like Derek White who are wide open, and guys like Jaylen Brown, who I think went 1 of 10, and Tatum was like 5 of 16 from three last game or something like that. Like the overall numbers look bad, but in real time, those were the shots that the Celtics offense is prioritizing time and time again. So I was of the camp, let's shoot 73s tonight. If New York is going to defend the Celtics the same way, let's keep shooting. I don't want to see us suddenly throw our entire game plan that got us to this point where we're the defending champs in a 60-win team. I don't want us to throw it all out the window just because, a bunch of old school NBA guys on Twitter were saying that, hey, we need to be more hard-nosed. We need to get to the basket. We need to force up a tough shot on Mitchell Robinson instead of kicking out for an open three. Like, I certainly wasn't of that camp. I tweeted out, hey, let's shoot 73s tonight. I wanted to have that mentality going into the game. And while this outside shot was never really falling for us even early in the game, like, again, we went up 20 points. We were up 20 points in the middle of the third. And from there on out, it was just a series of just a lid on the basket, getting really good looks down the stretch, and not being able to execute. And shout out my guy, Jeremy, coming out. He's not on the podcast, obviously, but he provided some notes for me after watching back the game himself of some notable plays that stood out to him. And I trust his judgment, so we're going to kind of read back some notable plays. Derek White missing back-to-back threes, and on the same possession, Kristaps Porzingis ended up missing like a one-handed putback shot, and it ended up turning into a Knicks layup on the other end of the court. That's a massive, 5-point swing right there. Another play where we actually did penetrate to the basket. JT got in the lane and missed KP on the lob. Ends up being a Knicks transition three. Later on in the fourth quarter, I believe that was Mikal Bridges who knocked that down. Another play, we had Al Horford. He actually finished a layup, then immediately got a steal, ended up missing an awkward shot out of that. And then the Knicks are able to capitalize, dive on the loose ball, and they get another transition three. And when you stack all these up, I mean, that's like a 15-point swing within itself, just kind of like looking at those plays. And I know it sounds crazy, but that's the margins when we're talking about playoff basketball. The worst part about having a miss like that is it automatically ends up in an advantage of the other team. KP had a weak foul on Mitchell Robinson that turned into an and one. Pritchard missed a wide open three. Horford missed a wide open three. Tatum missed a wide open three. Brown missed a wide open three. And Derek White, this one really stings. He had a putback layup on one of those last 3-point attempts. I believe it was on the Jaylen Brown one, and ended up missing it. It looked oddly similar. I have so much faith in Derek White being there on the putback just like he was for Miami Game 6 a couple years back, and unfortunately that one rimmed out. I mean, I feel like I'm just beating a dead horse here already, only 8 minutes or so into the podcast, but the shots that the Celtics took down the stretch were mostly good looks. The issue, and if we really have to start doing some blame pie about how bad things went down the stretch, I think you got to look at the last play specifically. The Celtics end up having the ball, right, with 24 seconds left in the game. The shot clock was still on, but it wasn't really going to be a factor. And the Celtics were down 1 at this point in time. And I was of the camp that I wanted the Celtics to just get a bucket right away. Like, hey, don't worry about whittling it down, taking a shot as time expires, because frankly, our execution in those situations was terrible. Let's just do everything we can to get some momentum, headed toward the basket, and get a quick look. And that's exactly what happened. We had Tatum get the ball, inbound the ball, right back to Tatum. High screen set at half court by Al Horford. It kind of threw the Knicks off a little bit. All of a sudden, Tatum's got momentum, sprinting toward the basket, dunks. It's like a 6-second play in total, and the Celtics go from up 1 to down 1. And then the crowd's on their feet. I think that was the first field goal that the Celtics had made in 8 minutes at that point. Unbelievable play. Great look. Hopefully JT's comfortable at that point in time, but now we got to get a stop, right? And again, as scary as Brunson is, I felt a lot more confident in the Celtics defense than I did our offense at that time. And unfortunately, Drew kind of found himself out of position guarding Brunson. They set a couple ball screens for him, and suddenly he's behind. Frankly, the foul that they ended up calling on the shot attempt for Brunson, it wouldn't matter because the Knicks were in the bonus, but I felt like they kind of called it at the wrong time. Drew probably reached in before, and then finally, like on the actual attempt, Brunson was just wide open. They ended up calling the foul, but I can't get too mad in that situation. Brunson almost always gets those calls, and in Brunson fashion, he knocks down those free throws as well. And then the Celtics have the ball, right? There's a timeout left. It's a made free throw. They're now down 1. There's 12 seconds left at that point in time. And I just don't understand the logic of not taking some time to regroup at that point in time and use your final timeout. At the very least, maybe advance the ball and then call the timeout, right? Get the ball up half court if the Knicks aren't pressuring. But instead, the Celtics just went right into the offense. Essentially, it was the same type of look where Jason Tatum was inbounding the ball. It went right back to him. They tried to set some sort of high ball screen with Al Horford. They got Mitchell Robinson onto Tatum. And instead of making that step back shot, that little turnaround elbow shot that Tatum has become strangely comfortable with. Not necessarily been falling in these 2 games against the Knicks, but we saw it many times against the Orlando Magic, him kind of going to that fall away, especially when he has the quickness advantage with the big on him. But instead, for some reason, Tatum decides to turn that corner at the elbow and then make like the extra step to draw in Mikal Bridges. And suddenly he's in no man's land. He's taking a really tough baseline fall away instead of that comfortable elbow shot that would have been more in rhythm. And then the worst part, we keep seeing this time and time again in these basketball games, just like the Celtics in game 1. We don't even get up a look at the end of the clock. Bridges ends up getting the steal, time expires, and the Celtics lose without getting up a look. Final score, what was it, 89-90? Just sickening to not call a timeout in that situation. I know it's really tough, but like, man, once Tatum turns that corner, like you have all those million assistant coaches for a reason. You got to be able to make that timeout call at some point. I think they should have done it before the play, but then that next opportunity was when Tatum was rounding the corner into no man's land, maybe right as he was picking up the dribble. Like, I don't care if there's 2 seconds left and it's a tough look. You're only looking for a 2-point field goal at that point in time. Any point will at least send the game into overtime. So you can drop a lob, you can get Kristaps back in the game, you can do whatever. And that just didn't happen. And so the 2 plays that are really frustrating are Tatum's decision-making on that front, the lack of the coaching staff supporting him, calling a timeout there. And this is just truly a nightmare game from Jason Tatum. I guess we can start there. He finished the game 5 of 19, 1 of 5 for 3, had 3 turnovers. You know, he was good for 13 points and 14 rebounds, but man, he just looked out of rhythm the entire time, and it was pretty frustrating. Going around with the blame pie here, you have Jaylen Brown to talk about. He had a good stretch early on in the game. He finished the game with 20 points, tied for the team lead with Derek White. But he had 6 really bad turnovers. You know, maybe one of those turnovers, I just watched him back, was forgiving when he tried to just like annihilate Brunson on a fast break early in the game, and Brunson ended up taking the charge. Like, whatever. That would have been a massive momentum play if he put it down. I'm not going to clown on a guy for trying to throw down a poster dunk, but I believe 4 of his 6 turnovers after that were all like stripaways, basically, like the classic like ball handling, lack of ball security that we saw from Jaylen Brown in the 2022 finals. Like OG Anunoby was like a moth to a flame when Jaylen would just like turn his back. Like, I think he was responsible for 3 of those turnovers, and then the final turnover was just one where Tatum had him on a fast break, gave a good bounce pass to Jaylen Brown, and for some reason he just bobbled it out of bounds. Like, that was just the type of night that the Celtics were having. Derek White, 6 of 17, including a really unfortunate putback layup miss down the stretch there. Like, if anybody I trust at this point in time, it's still Derek White. So heartbreaking to see not one of those shots fall for Derek White when we needed him the most. I guess we can talk about Kristaps if we're going player by player. Obviously, he ended up getting ruled out in the middle of the game in game 1, probably because we assumed that we were going to be able to win anyway. Like, we kind of had it in control at that point in time. That being said, he was questionable coming in. It was announced that he was going to come off the bench. And he looked all right. I mean, he's moving pretty awkwardly. He kind of got lucky on a step back 3 that inflated his point total up to 8. But, you know, it just would have been really nice to have him in there at the end of the game, because I think what makes the Celtics special as a half-court offense team is the ability to hunt those matchups. And when Kristaps is just annihilating guys in the high post and being really efficient with any sort of post-up look that we can give him, and then obviously you mix in the pick and pop on top of that, that's what makes the Celtics, especially from a half-court perspective, go from good to great. And you could make the argument, is really our best shot maker in the half-court situation. I know it's not always pretty with him doing those face-ups, and I'm not saying we would ask Kristaps to do that down the stretch when he was clearly still dealing with the effects of this illness and clearly didn't look himself out there. But I would have felt a lot better with him on the court just from clearing the offensive glass. A couple of the buckets that the Knicks got late were off of offensive rebounds. One of them in particular was just a kick out to a wide open Jalen Brunson for 3. Like, the Knicks started really cleaning up on the offensive glass right when we took Kristaps out of the game in the fourth quarter. And it just sucks that he's not 100%. I mean, that's kind of, I feel like a baby, because the Celtics easily should be able to win this series with or without Kristaps Porzingis. But those little margins of having that guy out there on the court just for his rim protection, ability to clean the glass, and maybe, just maybe, he helps us get a putback or helps us get an easier offensive look around the rim when we're just keep chucking up threes late. And he was not himself. And he's really the only guy that we have somewhat of an excuse baked in for. So this is really grim. Again, I cannot believe we are in this situation where it's just deja vu. You know, basically every other day, Monday night, Wednesday night, we're going through the same situation, losing to what I believe is truly an inferior team. And not just an inferior team, but a team that we dominated in the regular season, a team that on paper everybody loved the matchup for the Boston Celtics with our advantage on the defensive end of the court, with our ability to hunt matchups way more effectively than New York. We just feel like a better version of the Knicks in a lot of ways. And here we are. Now we have to win 4 out of 5 games. And so let's talk about how that could actually play out, right? I mean, it's no secret that Jason Tatum has been really rough in both of these games, and especially the end of game execution is stuff that could easily haunt this guy for the rest of his career, especially if we're not able to turn this around. Because the only thing worse than losing, like we had in previous years, is losing when the expectations couldn't be any higher. And again, I don't know a single person that would have picked the Celtics to lose in this series, and especially come out and lose the first 2 games at home. And so what needs to change is Jason Tatum's mindset needs to change. He was so aggressive. He murdered the Knicks. And I know a lot of that confidence in the regular season came from his outside shot falling, but he still looks like a way better athlete than anybody else on the court when he gets downhill. So the ability to unlock him in game 2 is going to be huge. I mean, we're really going to ride or die with Jason Tatum at this point. Jaylen Brown, I don't think we need him to have like a game 2 against Orlando like we saw last time where he just went off for 36 points. Like, we don't need him to do anything crazy. We just need him to be a little bit more reliable as a decision maker and as a ball handler. And from there, it's just, it sounds crazy, but I really don't think the Celtics need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to their 3-point shooting. I think if we just come out and shoot any less than 30, 35 threes next game, I don't think we win. Like, I think our best chance is to continue to try to generate the looks that we've been generating, because that's how we've played all year. And at some point, in a wide open shot from a 40% 3-point shooter or a 35% 3-point shooter just becomes an exponentially better look than forcing it just to try to prove a point at the rim. I think once we start doing that, the Knicks are still a great interior defensive team. You still have Karl Anthony Towns, that's a big body that can clear the glass. When Mitchell Robinson was out there, he gave the Knicks incredible minutes tonight when he's not bricking free throws. He is a force on that end of the court. And then guys like OG Anunoby and Josh Hart are just so smart and help situations, and they can clear the glass themselves. I think the Celtics just have to rely on the fact that we've beaten this New York team by shooting threes. And I know it sounds so stupid to say, we need to keep shooting. This is who we are. We can't turn it off. If we just throw out our game plan against an inferior team, like, we're screwed. We're screwed. We're not going to beat the Knicks playing a new brand of basketball that we have not been playing all season long. So I think we need to just lean in and continue to take the shots, because the only thing that'd be more astounding than shooting 25% from 3 2 games in a row would be doing that shit 3 games in a row. So at this point, all of our chips are in the middle of the table. This is really such an embarrassing scenario, especially given all of the talk around this Celtics team during the postseason run last year. I don't think there were too many that were trying to anoint the Celtics to historical status, but if you looked at the right numbers, they could certainly tell that story. You know, I would never was one to endorse that, but I said, hey, how they come out and how they defend this title is going to be everything. And it's really just a conversation starter if you want to start comparing the Celtics to other great teams historically. You can only put them in the camp of other teams that have only won 1 title until they actually go out and do it again. And this would be beyond embarrassing to go out and lose to a New York team that is just an inferior team. It's really just that simple. And as I sit here and record, I was talking to some guys after the game tonight. I believe that the Celtics are now plus money to win the series. I would imagine the Knicks are a favorite at this point in time. I think it's only plus 100 if you wanted to bet on the Boston Celtics to win the series. So the odds in Vegas give the Celtics what is that? An implied like 45% chance to win, and that's coming from Vegas. So I still think it's a coin flip. I really is. As stupid as it sounds, like, yeah, obviously every game is a must win at this point. If it goes to 3-0, at that point, I'm not even going to be recording a pod like this. I'm just going to be like in a ditch somewhere. But you need to go out and you need to win on Saturday. You have 2 days to recoup and, you know, force yourself to watch this god-awful film to figure out what went wrong. But the Celtics are not dead. That's the reality of it. It's embarrassing. I would feel a lot better about this if we were on the road. I know the Celtics have historically been a way better road team this season than they have a home team, but that Garden is going to be going stupid, and for good reason. And especially if the shots aren't falling early from outside, just like they haven't in the first 2 games, it's going to be even more raucous in that arena. I'm hoping that we can somehow get out to a big lead and take some of the wind out of the crowd's sails, but that crowd is going to be going for 48 minutes no matter what, after what they just saw their team do in the third and fourth quarter the past 2 games. So I think that covers most of it. Joe Mazzulla is going to get dragged quite a bit over the next 48 hours. It's going to be pretty crazy with the takes and all of a sudden the anti-Missoula people coming out of the woodwork. But I'll admit, I mean, this is a brutal situation for any coach to be in. I think he gets a lot of love for his just philosophy around basketball, how he carries himself as this more like spiritual leader of the team, right? Like the mentality that he has and this kind of like crazed off the spectrum type of vibe that he has going for him. People seem to be buying in on this, but like the philosophy and the Missoula ball of, switching everything and having 5 shooters on the court at all time, like that's great as a philosophy and that's great for the regular season. But at some point, you need to have confidence in your X's and O's as well and your ability to draw up looks for this team and try to prevent it to the point where, hey, how do we call a play that gets us an easy look so we don't go 8 minutes without a field goal? Like, how do we get Kristaps rolling to the rim for an easy one? Or how do we get Jalen or Jason downhill with momentum? It seemed like he has such a confidence in those guys to just figure those situations out, given all their experience. But at some point, you need a layup. You need a comfort shot in that is schemed up where you are wide open. And granted, the Celtics, again, we're getting great looks, but the reality is those shots weren't falling. It's just nice to get a confidence boost, and that needs to come from the coaches at some point. So that's what I'm going to be looking on. Like, how does he squash any sort of New York momentum if they are making a run? How does he get ahead of this curve? How does he drop some easy looks for the team when we are struggling to execute, especially inside the arc? So that's really all I got on the Celtics. It's an embarrassing situation. I still, gun to my head, you can call me crazy, you could say I'm coping, whatever. I'm still picking the Boston Celtics to win this series only because we know this Celtics team can beat the New York Knicks. We beat them 4 consecutive games in the regular season. Now we got to beat them 4 out of 5. We got to have some momentum. I'm praying that we can somehow steal both in New York, and then suddenly, all that momentum is going to be back in Boston's favor for Game 5. But it's going to be a long time between now and then. And this Knicks team has been in a lot of wars. They know who their 5 guys are. And there's nobody in that locker room for the Knicks right now that doesn't have supreme confidence, right? Like Josh Hart just shot 50% from 3. Any game that Josh Hart shoots 50% from 3, the Knicks become really tough to beat in that situation. Bridges has started both games terribly, and he closed out Game 1 with some massive defensive plays. And Game 2, he goes off for 14 points in the fourth quarter. Cat was a monster on the offensive glass, especially tonight. It looks like he only had 3 offensive rebounds, actually, but I felt like all of them were extremely loud and finished the game with 17 rebounds in total. They haven't even unlocked him as a shooter. He hasn't even been like a threat in the pick and pop. I guess OG Anunoby came back down to earth, but he's still the first guy that hits the floor in a lot of these situations. So all these guys have supreme confidence. It's not going to be an easy situation, but I'm just praying that hopefully in Game 3, the Celtics can actually get out ahead and just kind of like nip these choke jobs in the butt, essentially, and just dominate a game from start to finish. And then at some point in the series, and probably 2 of the games, if they're able to make it that far, they're going to need to win in these clutch situations. And hopefully they got all this out of their system in the first 2 games, because otherwise this is going to be an embarrassment. All of the things I've said in defense of the Boston Celtics, in defense of their legacy, in defense of Jason Tatum, like all that shit is going to come to roost. Like, I'm really not going to have much to say if we go out and lose in round 2. Like Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we're going to talk about them in a second, like maybe, depending on how that series go, maybe the Celtics don't get too much shit. Certainly if they lose to a team like OKC, I don't think that many people would be completely blindsided for it. But round 2, you have home court advantage, and you're playing the fucking Knicks. It's embarrassing to see New York fans as happy as they are right now. So there's probably a ton of key points that I'm missing in this game. This is really just me coping and venting and hopefully expressing some of the frustration that you guys have watching the Celtics over the past couple nights. And we'll certainly be back to watch on Saturday. And it's going to be a long 3 days between now and then before hopefully the Celtics are able to right the ship in Game 3. Keeping it moving here, just wanted to touch on some other series real quick, because I gotta say, if you're a neutral fan, I don't know a better round 2 in recent memory. The Cavs are where we want to go next here, falling 0-2 to the Indiana Pacers and having their own nightmare collapse in Game 2. I mean, Game 1 was tough. They're dealing with a bunch of injuries. Game 2, they come out, no Mobley, no Garland, no DeAndre Hunter, and we just have a Donovan Mitchell masterclass. He finishes with 48 points. I feel terrible for that guy. I think he was like a plus 13 in that 1-point loss to the Pacers. It was an incredible Aaron Nesmith game, including a massive putback dunk on a missed free throw that really gave the Pacers some life. And then, of course, you guys have probably seen it by now. Tyrese Halliburton goes to the free throw line down 3, makes the first free throw, somehow gets his own rebound after the second free throw, then ends up getting Ty Jerome on the perimeter, gets to his step back 3, and nails a shot basically as time expires to put the Pacers up 1. And they literally steal that game in Cleveland. That was a bloodbath for the Pacers all night long. So we'll talk about the Cavs here for a second. It's so shocking that these two teams that have been dominant all regular season long, like it hasn't even been close. No other team has had a real shot at the 1 seed all year long. It's just been Cleveland and Boston. And for both of these guys to be down 0-2 is beyond shocking, right? I will say it shouldn't be as a surprise based on everything I just said about the Celtics, but I think the Cavs are in a worse situation. Health-wise, I think they are just in a tougher spot. Obviously, again, with the Garland, Mobley, and Hunter injuries, I don't know if there's been any updates since Game 2 yesterday. Realistically, it's the playoffs. All these teams are keeping the info close to the vest, so I'd expect all these guys to be questionable up until game time, so we're not going to know until like 30 minutes, before tomorrow's game, or I think they play on Friday, so until Friday's game. But they are in a really tough spot because you can't ask for a better Donovan Mitchell game. And especially with that Mobley injury, like Cleveland being a really thin team in their front court is notable. They don't have a backup big. Like the closest thing they've had to it is like DeAndre Hunter. And, I guess if you want to count Dean Wade there, they really have nobody to plug into that spot to give them consistent backup minutes. And everybody on the Pacers just goes so hard. They attack the paint with such speed and they play at such a crazy pace that it makes it really hard for Cleveland to have their help defense in order with only Jared Allen out there. Obviously, he's great, but in those non-Jared Allen minutes, it's probably going to be a struggle. And I just think that Indiana already matched up pretty well with Cleveland, and now you get this confidence boost from Halliburton, who's becoming a real playoff riser. As much as I hate to admit it, like this guy's been unbelievable, even going back to his game winner against the Bucks to seal it in Game 5. Like this guy's on one, and he should have more confidence than anybody else in that series. So I think if I had to bet, I would expect the Pacers to be able to close this out, obviously pending the health of all the guys on the Cavs. I think that this could easily go 7. I think that the Cleveland's going to steal at least 2 games here. That's going to go to at least Game 6. But right now, the Pacers, I have to imagine, would be a heavier favorite than even what the Knicks are in this situation. And again, similar to the Knicks, they're going back to a crowd in Indiana, a team that has incredible fans, a great arena where the fans are extra close to the court. I think that's going to pay dividends. And so, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about the Pacers right now, which honestly, it should make me feel better that the Cavs are struggling just like the Celtics. But honestly, it makes me feel worse because now I'm really going to jinx this team. But I would feel better, knock on wood, playing Indiana than what I would Cleveland in round 2. I'm assuming by the time we would get to Cleveland, all those guys on the Cavs would be healthy. And I'd much rather face Indiana, even though they're a really hot team right now. So, yeah, that's going to be another potential massive upset in the Eastern Conference. And so the East really could not be more wide open. It's never been more wide open in probably a decade than what it is right now. And then we kick things over to the Western Conference. I touched upon this at the beginning of the podcast, but Denver got absolutely annihilated by OKC tonight, which I think a lot of people probably saw coming. I know I certainly was not going to pick Denver tonight, even though I picked them to win the series, just because they ended up going obviously 7 games against the Clippers. Game 7 was ultimately a dud, and the Nuggets kind of steamrolled LA in that one. But they just had one day off before having to travel to OKC to play Game 1, and obviously they came out won in a really surprising fashion in Game 1. Really came down to the fact that OKC played their cards wrong with the foul game, and ultimately Chet missed 2 free throws. Christian Brown gets the rebound, kicks it up to Russell Westbrook, who makes the correct decision to hit Aaron Gordon for a wing 3 and drills it to win at the buzzer. So Denver really stole Game 1, and you kind of felt like the momentum and the lack of rest was going to catch up to Denver at some point, especially with Michael Porter Jr. already banged up. I don't even know what the stats look like tonight, but OKC annihilated these guys. I am obviously still going to stick with my pick of Denver in this series. It's going to be really tough, but I did see some stuff in Game 1, Denver being able to dominate the glass, Jokic being fantastic and looking just a lot more comfortable on the court compared to what he did against the Clippers, because as great of a defender as Isaiah Hartenstein is, he is no Zubac. Like Zubac defends Jokic better than anybody else in the NBA. And for some reason, the Thunder actually started the game with Chet Holmgren guarding Jokic last night, which was kind of surprising because Chet just obviously does not have the strength or the size to hold up physically against Jokic. And so, yeah, I mean, OKC has way more youth, way more athleticism, a much better defense as a whole. But the greatness of what Jokic and Murray can do when they're locked in and that experience of winning close games, I'm just going to err on the side of Denver being able to eke out close ones just like they did in Game 1. So I think that series is also going to go 7 games, but I am taking Denver in that one. And the final series we'll touch upon real quick, Warriors and Wolves. Really unfortunate news that Steph Curry pulled a hammy. I saw a crazy report that I guess that's like the first pulled muscle of Steph's career, which doesn't make any sense that somebody can be in the NBA, like 15, 16 years at this point in time. It just speaks to how good of shape that Steph is in, that he's, I guess, never technically came away with a muscle strain, but I guess he pulled his hammy in game one early on against the Wolves. He was getting going early, had 13 points in 13 minutes, and was out for the remainder of the game. The only problem for the Wolves is that they didn't bother showing up. Just a completely off night from the Wolves, and they just looked like a complete mess, which tends to happen with a younger team like Minnesota, and that's why I didn't even take Minnesota to beat the Lakers, which obviously looks stupid in hindsight, but Minnesota is liable for these duds. I do expect them to get right. I think it's just going to be nearly impossible for Golden State to survive in this series without Steph Curry. He has been ruled out for game two. There's not an exact timetable on his return. Kind of expected him to be out for game two, and I'm guessing they'll just kind of be questionable. And again, he'll be a game time call for game three. Even if they know he's out, they're probably going to keep that stuff close to the vest. But by all accounts, this is a really serious injury for Steph Curry. And my pick for that series just kind of rests in the hand of Steph. I don't really care if that's a cop-out. I would have picked the Warriors before this series just because of their experience, because I had them going to the Western Conference Finals anyway. But Anthony Edwards had about as bad of a game as we've seen from him in the postseason. Last game, the outside shots certainly were not falling, but they have another game in front of their home crowd to get right. And I think without Steph Curry, I'm expecting Minnesota to win convincingly tomorrow night. So that just about does it. Again, hopefully you guys understand my lack of excitement around these other series. I'm just really beside myself as a Celtics fan right now. And it just sucks. It just sucks when you're in a completely different situation when the expectations are what they are. I really have never felt this good about the Celtics' chances to contend for a title really ever. Like before a season, I guess you'd probably have to go all the way back to 2008 just because we actually had the confidence of being able to get it done last year. And while I did pick them to win last year, I didn't have the same confidence because I'd never seen us do this before. And I felt like, again, we really righted the ship, answered a lot of the concerns around the team, and then suddenly we're in this situation where we haven't been able to step up when the three-point shots aren't falling. We haven't been able to execute at the end of the close games. Jason Tatum doesn't look comfortable taking and making those tough shots, and it doesn't even look like we have the right guy at the controls right now through two games. And that's not an issue that's popped up all year long because people have been giving Missoula the benefit of the doubt, but that's just how quickly things can change. I don't mean to be overreactionary, but losing two games at home to an inferior team, and especially when it's a massive franchise like the Knicks, doesn't do the Celtics any favors. So again, I have some confidence that we will be able to turn this thing around, but if this doesn't, this is an unmitigated disaster. Like any shit that people want to talk about, Celtics fans, have at it. My line is open because we deserve it if we're not able to figure this out against the New York Knicks. So thoughts and prayers. Godspeed, everybody. Just keep your head in there. Maybe go for a walk. Hopefully the weather's nice outside between that now and then. Just find a way to cope. Have a drink on a Thursday night. I don't know what to tell you. Find a way to get through. And Saturday can't get here soon enough. I know some of you guys might be dreading it, but I am very excited to be able to watch my team go out there again on Saturday and hopefully have a chance to get some momentum back. Because once it gets to 2-1, hopefully that'll be a sigh of relief. Hopefully we can keep that momentum rolling through the second game in New York, but a lot of work to do between now and then. So I'll sign off with that. Before I let you guys go, be sure to follow Outwards with Wallace on everything. I'll try to tweet a little bit more. I know the podcast schedule's been all over the place. Been trying to watch all the games, and I haven't been doing as great with the social content either, so maybe I can find some reel of me being embarrassed along this podcast to post. But follow Outwards with Wallace and all the social media to stay up with my tweets and anything I post, and your support there goes a long way, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.